Hello, my name is Rebecca Waters. I am the president of the Ohio chapter for ACFW, the American Christian Fiction Writers Organization. And I'm excited today to have on our podcast author, award winning author, Sandra Merville Hart. And we're going to be talking about some of her books and some of the things she has going for her. But I wanted you to meet her today. Welcome, Sandy.
Thank you, Becky. It's wonderful to be here today.
Good. Listen, I've read some of your books, which are just incredibly wonderful. I've read historical fiction. I know you write some other things as well. But the historical fiction or the Civil War fiction that I've read is really compelling and interesting. I think the first book I picked up was A Stranger on My Land, and it was a shorter novel, but I really enjoyed it. Can you kind of tell us what is the story behind that? What led you to write that?
Well, that was my debut novel. And what really captured me about that, so I was reading an account of a soldier's journal that he'd written, and he talked about the battle on above the clouds on Lookout Mountain, and he was stationed there after the battle. And he said the people lived in caves. There were caves all over the mountain, and that they had them fixed up like homes. They were, some of them, very, very nice. And that's what captured me. But they were there in hiding. That's so I used that in my story.
It was evident. It was very good. And so that was a really true fact. I mean, I know you're very true to facts when you write these things. So let's move on because I really enjoyed that, but I really want to hear about the next one too because I'm curious about how you get these ideas. A Rebel in My House came out in 2017, and I just want to know what was the story behind that one.
Oh, that one is set in the Battle of Gettysburg. And that's really different. This is the only time this happened to me, but I knew there was a story waiting for me in Gettysburg. I didn't know what it was. All I knew was a Gettysburg seamstress and a Tennessee soldier. So I went to find out what happened during the battle and what my story was, because honestly, that's all I knew. I went there, we walked the battlefields, we had a tour guide. You can pay for a driver to a licensed battlefield guide to drive with you through the battlefield. He took us to where the Tennessee soldiers were. There were three troops, three Tennessee regiments that were there. They fought on the first day, and they didn't fight again until the last day during Pickett's charge. So that seemed like a really important regiment to me. So I decided to go with them, but still didn't know my story. I went to museums and I did walks around the Diamond. The Diamond is right at the center of town where so much happened. And I learned about the um, the nightmare that the townspeople lived through. Most people do not know that. They focus on the battle, but the Confederates came in on the very first day and they occupied the town until it was over. Most people don't know what the nightmare was that they went through. And I remember going to the spot where on Cemetery Ridge where Pickett's charge took place. I looked at that valley. It was peaceful. It was the evening and the sun was setting. And I just stared out over that valley and imagined all those soldiers coming across it. And where I was, there were soldiers waiting for them and shooting at them
Mhm.
and shooting off cannons at them. And it just did something to me. And uh, the land is silent now, but still tells a story. And I left knowing I had a story to write.
That's interesting because that is a very interesting mix of both the North and the South and in this romance, correct?
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. I try
yeah,
to tell two sides of the story.
that's great. That's great. Um, The third one in that series, I believe, is called A Musket in My Hands.
That's right.
I enjoyed that one. And I have three daughters, so I was kind of interested in that one myself. But what was behind that?
Well, I learned that there were women who fought in the battle on both sides. Women weren't supposed to fight, so they disguised themselves as men, dressed up like soldiers, and mustered into the army for a variety of reasons. And in my story, it's two sisters. They have no choice but they have to find a safe haven. And for some reason, the army seems like the safest haven they can go to. They muster into the army, where the men they love are in that regiment, and but they're disguised as soldiers for their own safety too. But there's just so much that they went through, and I had to do so much research. Well, how did they successfully disguise themselves as men? How did they, live with them, and keep them their identity secret? And their one good thing is that the soldiers slept with their clothes on and their shoes on.
Yes.
So that helped a lot.
That would be. I mean, I'm
And
thinking of that you don't have the outhouses marked men and women, so that's gonna. And you're not
this is
going to have them. You're not even going to have them on the battlefield and the trail.
This is true. In the tents, they shared two-person tents, and one person carried half the tent, half the canvas on their back, and the other one carried the other half. And then they put it together each night. So they were able to stay together. The sisters were.
Wow.
There's just a lot of things.
Wow. A lot of
It was so much fun.
Yes. Yes. And I like too that all three of those books have really satisfying endings.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
Yeah. That's good. It's sometimes hard to find satisfying endings and find that closure in a war story. And
I appreciate that.
that was
Yes.
really good. So what's in the works? What's next on the Civil War front?
Oh, I am currently writing a Civil War series. This one is a spy series, so it's completely different. There was a lot of stuff that went on, and spying in the north, spying in the south, spying in all kinds of areas, but you wouldn't believe how much was taking place right by the White House in Washington. Just within blocks, how Confederate spy ring networks were there, and in Richmond, which is where the first book takes place in Washington, and the second two take place in Richmond, where there was plenty going on there. That was the Confederate capital. And one fun thing about my first book is I try to go to my locations, my important book locations, but there was one that I knew I wasn't going to be able to get to, especially with COVID going on. It was too hard. I just had to let it go. But last year, I was invited to a writing retreat on the Outer Banks, and I kept thinking, Lord, should we go? Should I go? Because I was going by myself, because it was in the COVID time. It was in October, and I never had anything that told me not to. And I was like, I wonder if, what I can explore on the island that could possibly have to do with my novel. And I was looking up Fort Clark and Fort Hatteras, where they were located, which is the two Confederate forts that I needed to visit that I wasn't going to be able to visit. And lo and behold, I found one day I was looking, where are they? They're on the Outer Banks. Well, is it on the island I'm staying? Yes, it was on the island staying 20 miles away. Like, Lord, you got me there anyway. I was so amazed. Of course, those forts are not there anymore, but the locations they're There was museums that I could go to. It was amazing. And I found out some stuff there that I hadn't been able to find out in books yet. And so it was an important trip.
That's
But
great.
I just feel like God did that for me.
Yeah.
It was pretty amazing. Those are the kind of God moments that keep you going.
Right. I agree. When do you expect this one to release, or what are you looking at?
My agent still has it out. There's a couple of people who are looking at it. So hopefully I'll know that soon.
That sounds great. And you have a couple of novellas, I know. You want to just briefly tell us what those are, where we would find those?
Oh, sure. One of my novellas is in the Cowboys Smitten collection. And it was set in 1870, Abilene, Kansas, which was a wild cattle town at that time. And it's a pretty wild scene that I have my characters in. And it was just a lot of fun, a lot less research than for my Civil War stuff to write this one. So it was like a breath of fresh air to write it. And my other novella is in Mount Zion Ridge Press collection. It's called From the Lake to the River. And my story in that is Surprised by Love. I had always, even when I wasn't writing, there was a story that kept coming to me that was set during a flood. When I found out that there had been this great flood in 1913 in Ohio, I picked the small city of Troy, Ohio, and I sat there and I just love these characters. I did research. I found a wonderful museum where I found out some great facts, and Surprised by Love, they go through so much stuff. But I just had so much fun doing it.
And I remember reading that. It was excellent. Well, thank you very much for being with us today. And those of you who want to find out more about Sandy and her books, you can visit her website, sandramervillehart.wordpress.com. And you can find her on Amazon. So thank you very much for joining us today, Sandy.
Thank you very much, Becky. I enjoyed it.
Good.